Happy Sunday, everybody. This is Zach Said It Again. I'm your host, Zach Cooley, and I am happy to be here with my good friend, Philip MacAdams, to talk about an excellent night out at the movies to our wonderful, beautifully restored Millwald Theatre to see a very classic film, Casablanca. Thank you for being with me, Philip.
Oh, my pleasure.
And it was indeed a classic film, and you are a classic film buff, which is why it so surprised me that you had never seen Casablanca.
Yes, I hadn't seen it before, so it was a real treat to see it and to see it on the big screen. I think it makes it all all a little bit more special. So just to get to see a classic movie like that in a theater with people and, hear the oohs and ahs and the clapping at the end, it's all part of the experience.
Yeah, that I never, I didn't really get the applause at the end because, it's not like Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman could hear us, but I don't know, maybe they can wherever they are.
I actually really like the ending. I'm glad they ended it the way they did. It was the ending it needed to be. They could have gone the other way, and I thought, man, it just it wouldn't have been the same.
Yeah, and everybody, people won't leave it alone. There have been remakes and books and movies and fan fiction and all this that bring the different ending. If you haven't seen the film, stop the podcast now because we're going to do some spoiler alerts here. But to bring Ilsa and Rick together, and I don't think Ilsa and Rick were ever meant to be together. It was one of those ill-fated things because her husband really did love her, and even though I think that Rick probably ignited a passion within her that probably her husband did not, I think she loved her husband and had no reason to part ways with him.
Yeah, he was a good guy, and he he had his ideals and, was fighting for what was right for him in the war and doing what he could. And I think Rick kind of did the noble thing. And if he didn't, then I don't know. I think it would have flawed the character.
Yeah. There was an era in those days, and I wish they had it today. There is an era of filmmaking where it was in the contract, and I believe this was Warner Brothers, where no act of murder or no act of adultery, regardless of how it turns out in the book, would go unpunished on film.
Yes.
And that was lifted sometime in the early 60s. But that was a rule back then in those days, and one I think should have been left in there because this when you go to movies, or at least when I go to movies, I want escapism from the real world. I want things to be tied up with a nice happy ending, happily ever after, because so much real life doesn't do that. And but in this situation, the American Film Institute voted the Bogart Bergman affair as the number one passion of all time on screen. But this was a situation, and I'm sure you'll agree with me that nobody won. Nobody was going to win. If she went with Rick, nobody was going to win, So it really didn't matter which way it went. It wasn't going to be like, oh, this is the one she's supposed to be. At least not to me. But people will not let it go. Like Amy Wickham said to me this when she passed by me to leave the theater. She said, I thought this time he'd get the girl. You know, people are still holding out for that and won't let it go. And I read a book at the library. It was called As Time Goes By, and it was sort of a prequel and a sequel to. It gave you the background and where you were in the movie and what happened at the end. Of course, it had them getting married. And it was a really long, it could have been really, really nicely done. It was approved by Warner Brothers, but it's one of those stories that you just don't need to mess with.
Yeah, I think it's pretty singular. It began where it needed to begin, and it ended where it needed to end, and that made for a nice story. And you use your imagination, I think, where the characters go and what happens. And I don't need a sequel of what their life was a year later or
right.
what have you.
Right. And you, having not seen it for the first time, you got the magic of the whole thing. So what was your impression of the whole story?
I really liked it. I really liked it a lot. I wasn't sure where it was going. I didn't have a lot of background on what the whole storyline was. So this was like watching it all brand new. And now afterwards, I know why it's such a classic. Because it was excellent. The characters, the dialogue, and to see it on the big screen. I remember the moment Humphrey Bogart first appeared. You could hear, like a few oohs and ahs, like, little like, there he is. And the same thing when Ingrid Bergman just first appeared on screen. She comes on screen, and I mean, she's just gorgeous, and you could hear like a few little gasps, like, there she is. even after all this time, and most people have seen. There was another friend of mine that was there that hadn't seen the movie before, and she's just lost her mother. So we want to dedicate this podcast to the memory of Judy Rohr. Her mother was also a friend of mine. They used to come to the trivia nights at the library. Okay.
And Judy was the lady with Parkinson's. I don't know if you remember.
Oh,
her.
Yes.
But anyway, Judy has recently passed, and Teresa was out, so it was good to see Teresa out. It was good that she came to that. She had never seen Casablanca before. So it could not have been a better setting for you to see such a classic film. And,
definitely.
And you have the thrill of working at Millwald, and you possess the right kind of energy and enthusiasm that is needed for that job. What's it like for you to go to work in a place like that?
Well, it's really a good time. The people that are there are all, really passionate and committed to what they're doing. And, there's, especially concert nights, there's like this energy of, let's put on a show and, make it happen. It's, almost that kind of positive, nervous energy, adrenaline maybe.
Motivation.
Yes, yeah.
Motivation.
And it's nice to see it, and I get to see some things here and there. And there's when we had Pantillis, I got to, I was doing some ushering inside for a little while, and then I got to see like half the show, and she was amazing. It was great to see that, and some of the movie nights, like stuff I've seen on VHS, in the 80s or DVDs that I have, like Friday the 13th, to see that up on the big screen. That was kind of cool. And then Grease, we got a pretty big crowd for that, and all the music sequences and the dances. You could hear people in the audience like singing along, and that was fun to see that. And Dirty Dance, I had never seen Dirty Dancing either. I ended up going into the last, I don't know, I want to say last 15, 20 minutes, and of course, which is like the best part, the whole, like, nobody puts baby in a corner, and takes her up, and they do that final dance with that song we've all heard a gazillion times, and to see it on the big screen and doing it that was pretty cool. And
some of the go ahead.
Your neighbor down the street and our mutual friend Nora, I was off the night that they did Princess Bride, and she's like, "Hey, let's go." And I had never seen that one either. So
you're getting a great film education from the Millwald.
I am. I'm getting a great film education. So yeah.
Well, you mentioned Dirty Dancing. Some of the outdoor sequences of that film were shot not too far from here, about 2 hours away in Smith Mountain Lake.
Yes. Actually, I went with our mutual friend Jeremy a couple months ago. We, I think it was in spring or early summer, we went to the Cascades hiking there, and on the way back, I don't think it was a far detour to take over there, and we did go over to that hotel and some of the grounds, that whole gazebo that's, I guess, in the beginning of the movie, and there's hardly any water in the lake, but it's nice. It's nice to see it and get to see those film scenes, and I think one of the cabins they used for us, so it was nice.
Well, another one that I'm sorry I missed at the Millwald was White Christmas. I've seen White Christmas many times. It's an annual part of our holiday tradition. I've even seen it on the big screen in Bristol, but we didn't make it to the Millwald, and then it was a huge success.
I want to say that was probably the biggest audience we had so far. Well, for movies. Mm-hmm. That drew a big crowd. We've been getting some generous sponsorship from the With Bland Foundation, and they've sponsored some events and had some free community movies. In fact, for later this month, they're sponsoring Superman, the Christopher Reeve 1970 original one. So that should be a fun one to see.
By the time people hear this, though, it will be May, and Jeff is going to bring, speaking of energy and go-getters, Jeff Potts came all the way from Wisconsin to be the executive director of this place. And somebody who has energy and enthusiasm for film, it is that man for sure.
Oh, definitely, yeah. It's
Maston.
It's contagious.
Yes, it is. Maston Paisley has been my friend since day one. He's a year younger than me. We went all the way through school together. I know his wife. She's a wonderful lady. And they're wonderful people. And you introduced me to Susie Booth, who is the technical director who worked in Off-Broadway. And here she is in our little theater in Wytheville. And
very lucky to have her. All of them. It's a really good team. We have Brady Parks there too, and Morgan Herbert, and all of them really bring. They all bring something really great to the theater, and it all balances out pretty nicely.
Yes, and the Millwald to me, as it is with many people who live here, I grew up going to the movies in that place. They back when I, 5 and 6 years old, when I was growing up, they would re-release the Disney films into theater as a main run in the box office, and we would get to see things like Jungle Book and Snow White and 101 Dalmatians. It's my favorite story that I've told over and over again, that my great-grandmother and I went in to see 101 Dalmatians, and after getting a lecture from my mother before going in about being quiet so that the other people could hear the movie, we were the only 2 people in the theater, and my Granny Rose says, "Oh, good, we're the only 2 people in the theater. We can laugh as loud as we want to," and we did. We had a great time, and that's my favorite memory from the Millwall. But in those days, to go see, even when I was coming up, it was a family event to go see whatever the latest Disney movie was, or if they re-released an old one, or if the Muppets had put out a movie. It was a family event for everybody to go. And
sure.
And it was pretty unusual to get all 4 of us out at the same time going to the same place. That would be virtually impossible now. But having grown up in the Millwall,
next movie, and just escape for 2 hours and be put into another world.
And it was, I'm obsessed with the 50s era, when America was actually prospering, and it's always been my dream for Millwall to be remodeled and to look like an old movie theater, and to go in and see old movies and feel like that you're going to a big premiere in the 50s. And that's what I felt like, coming out with Emily, coming out of the theater, and the marquee, it seems like that one marquee lit up the whole town. And like I said, I've seen White Christmas on the big screen, but we had to go all the way to Bristol to see it, or we'd have to drive to Marion, and then my big van that cost $100 to fill up. That's a lot of gas mileage just to go see a movie. So it was so nice just to be right around the corner,
Yeah, I think it's a great addition, and it's going to have a lot of options for people to to go out and not have to go to Christiansburg or Blacksburg or go out of state, or it's something close by, and it looks like they're going to have a lot of different kind of programming. So I think there's going to be something for everybody, but it's good to just a couple movies a month, and some really good classics and some fun ones, and musicals and stuff like that, to be able to go for pretty much $8 a ticket, which is not bad, and $3 popcorn and $3 sodas. It's not something that you're going to go out for 2 people and spend $100. It's pretty reasonable,
right? Which, if you go to a movie in bigger cities like Christiansburg or Roanoke, you're going to spend $100 on tickets and concessions to see a regular movie. And in this instance, you can see a classic movie like Casablanca for $6 at a base price, and then you have a $1.80 box office fee, and then another $1 to contribute to the historical restoration, which I think is wonderful, because we all want to contribute to the success of Millwall. I think I don't know anybody in Wytheville that doesn't want it to succeed. And if they don't want it to succeed, they need to leave. They need to find another town, because this really, like the Bowling Wilson Hotel, I said, what I wouldn't give to, if we have this night out, to go, to have everything paid for, to go, if I could afford it, to go to to Millwald to see an old movie, and then to go across the street and have dinner at Gray's on Main and have a room up at the Bowling Wilson Hotel, because my great-grandmother stayed there, too, on her wedding night in 1944.
Oh, nice.
Easter Sunday, 1944. And 4 months later, he passed away of cancer. So,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so none of us ever knew him, including his daughter that would be born the following March. She found out she was pregnant the day of his funeral. And it's really,
wow.
Yeah, it's really a very tragic story. But I had my Granny Rose till she was 92. We saw many movies together at the Millwald. And she died just 2 months before that hotel opened, and I wanted to take her so badly to see. But I mean, what a perfect evening would that be if you could go and do all that, you know? And,
yeah.
And I, you know, and I have a story about White Christmas too. They all went. My great grandmother and several of her siblings all went to see it at the Millwald in 1954 on Christmas Eve, and when they came out, it was snowing.
Oh, perfect.
So yeah, so that you can't write a story that good.
Yeah. The flip side of that story is we were scheduled to show Polar Express like a couple days before Christmas, and we had a really bad snowstorm, but so bad that we had to cancel the show that night.
We sure did, and it was a sellout too, I believe.
Oh, I believe so.
I believe it was a sellout, so people got, you know, they could redeem their tickets at a future event. And
yeah, we had a makeup movie.
Oh, it had a makeup movie, yeah.
I don't remember which one it was, but it was something.
When people came to see it, that's great. But as far as Casablanca, for its time, every technique that they had in Hollywood, Michael Curtiz, who also directed White Christmas, used every element, from the lighting to the dialogue, very witty dialogue, one of the most quoted films in history. As Paul Dellinger pointed out to me, the most famous quote in the movie, "Play It Again, Sam," was never actually uttered as "Play It Again, Sam."
Oh, no, yeah.
Yeah. Ingrid Bergman said, "Play it, Sam. Please play as time goes by." And then Bogart says to him later, play it again. If she can stand it, so can I. So,
yeah.
And of course, that's a great song. And
I love that song.
And Dooley Wilson is a superbly talented man. What I found out, one of the few American-born entertainers in that cast, which makes sense. He had to mime his piano playing because he was a drummer, not a piano player. And the director even considered overdubbing his vocals, which I'm so glad he didn't do, because Dooley,
he had a wonderful, distinctive voice.
Yeah, very Louis Armstrong sounding.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, he was perfect for that role. Yeah. Everybody was really so good. Yeah. And I was surprised, you know, seeing it for the first time and not having a lot of background. I remember when Peter Lorre just came on screen. I was like, hey, that's Peter Lorre. What's he doing here?
Mm-hmm. And you can't miss his eyes, you know, sort of.
No, you can't. He's very distinctive.
Sort of like Marty Feldman when they come on the screen, you know who it is. But
a lot of people, the Sidney Greenstreet and that, and I recognize he was in fact, his last movie was just a few years after that, 1949's Flamingo Road with Joan Crawford.
Yeah, see, you're very up on these old films, which was really a shock to me that you had not seen.
Yeah. And another thing for Casablanca, just a little trick. What was it? Paul Henreid?
Paul Henreid, yes.
Yeah, yes. I mean, he was was wonderful.
Yeah.
And he played, that was a tough role because, you want to play it sympathetic, but you have this other, love interest, and
you want to cause conflict as well.
Yes, yeah, and I just think he did it perfectly. But I was reading afterwards that he, as well as continuing on acting, he was in Now Voyager, I think, right after or right before this one. But
which is one of my wife's favorite films with Betty Davis, Now Voyager.
Oh yes, and what's the other funny thing was, as he went on to do directing. And I had no idea. I never put two and two together. He directed Betty Davis in 1964's Dead Ringer.
Wow.
Which was an old black and white one she did right after Baby Jane. Yeah. And that's one where she plays identical twins, a rich one and a poor one, and the poor one kills the rich one and assumes her life, and tries to pass herself off as the rich sister. And
in that vein of Baby Jane, the sibling rivalry and the bitter deceit for the other one.
Yeah, but I had no idea he directed her, and that he was the director. So
Paul Henry was also famous for doing the smoking more than one cigarette at a time. He would do this bit where he would light two cigarettes at once. Because there's an episode of I Love Lucy that Desi is smoking his own cigarette and he's lighting one for Lucy. And he says, "Look, Lucy, I'm making like Paul Henry. I'm smoking."
Oh, wow.
Well, thank you so much for your time. You've been wonderful as usual. And
my pleasure.
And
always good talking with you.
And I enjoyed this film, and I look forward to many, many more.
Well, me too. Well, yes.
Thank you very much, Philip.
Oh, you're welcome. We'll always have Casablanca.
I'm gonna end it right there. We can't top that. We'll always have Casablanca. You're not gonna top that one. So indeed we will, sir. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.